We've been doing this church online thing for, I think, 7 weeks now. We've been doing a couple events here and there in the middle of the week. It's been going so great. Today we have a very special guest, as I'm sure most of you are here for. I'm really looking forward to it. When I texted Trevor a couple weeks ago, he was just so open to it, so gracious of him to come here. He's out on the East Coast in Ohio, and so I scheduled the time actually, and then I texted him this week, and I was like, wait, what time zone are you in? And for some reason I thought he was in the mountain time zone because he plays football in Edmonton, and then I realized he was in the East Coast, and he was still gracious enough to come here. So it's pretty much the middle of the night for him over there, but we're so thankful to have him here today. I just wanted to give a special welcome to Southside Youth. You guys know that I love you, and everything that I do here at Southside Church, I do with you guys in mind. And I know that some of the things that Trevor's been through in his life and what he's currently going through, just in terms of uncertainty, he's dealing with a lot of the same things we're going through as well. And so he has a lot to add to all of us. I'm here to learn just like you guys are. I'm really looking forward to it. And so, hey, if you guys are new with us today, if this is the first time you've been to a Southside Church event or service or whatever it is, why don't you just text the keyword hello? So that's just hello to 604-670-3040. It'll be on the bottom of the screen here. If you're out of country and joining us for the first time, just go to our website, southsidelife.com. In the bottom right-hand corner, there's a chat box, and what you can do is just message in the keyword hello on there, and we'll send you a $5 Starbucks gift card, just as our way of saying just thank you for joining us here today, and everyone is welcome here at Southside Church. I'll remind you guys at the end again, but if you're new with us, make sure to do that. And so I'm going to bring Trevor on. So Trevor's joining us from Ohio, like I said. He's been incredibly gracious to me in the time that I've known him. And so, Trevor, just thank you so much for being here, man. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm glad to be on here. Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome, man. So I'm just going to tell quickly the story of how we kind of met. And so 2 years ago, I was playing basketball at the University of Calgary. This part of the story I didn't need to tell, but I'm going to quickly tell it. We won a national championship 2 years ago. Just a quick flex. I had to do it. And then the year after, we were back at nationals. We played St. Mary's in the first round. We beat them by 20. Then we played Ryerson in a rematch of the final the year before. We won by a couple points. And I remember getting into the locker room, and I got to tell you guys, I grew up an Oilers fan and an Eskimos fan. Like, me and my dad would watch the Oilers and Eskimos all the time growing up. And I look at my phone and it says the CFL has started following you on Instagram. And I'm like, as a Canadian kid, man, that's pretty cool. And so I go on, I look in my DMs, and they're like, can we use this photo as a separated from birth post with Trevor Harris? And I'm like, the Eskimos quarter, like, I didn't even know what they meant. So I went on his profile. I think we're going to throw them up on the screen here, the pictures for you guys to look. You guys be the judge. My hair looks a little different than it did at the time. I'm sure Trevor noticed that too. I don't know. So you guys vote in the chat. Let us know if you think we look alike or not. But I remember looking in his bio, and I'm like, I texted my dad. I'm like, the Eskimo starting quarterback just got put in a post with me on Instagram. Like, I was like a kid in a candy shop, dude. I was so excited. And so I see someone's pumped about the Oilers and Eskimos. Only Eskimos love tonight, man. No BC Lions talk tonight. And so I went and I saw that he was a Christian in his Instagram bio, and so I sent him a message, and I was like, man, like, you probably get this a lot, but this is like super cool for me. I grew up watching Ricky Ray and the Eskimos play. It was so much fun, and then I'm an Oilers fan too, and I just tried to I mentioned that he was a Christian. I was like, that's so cool. And I just want to say to you, Trevor, like, from the first day, I was just kind of fanboying. Like, you were always just so gracious, and you really encouraged me in my faith too. And in Calgary, I was pretty isolated. I didn't have an awesome church family there. And so you actually brought a lot of encouragement to me at that time in my life. And so I want to say thank you for that as well.
No, likewise, man. It's a brotherhood, and that's what it's all about. And just because somebody's good at football doesn't mean they're a better person than anybody.
Yeah.
And we're all just called to love one another. And if you want to act like you're better than somebody else, then I don't know that's God's love. And so that's never been who I am.
For sure. Okay, so I'm going to get into the questions here. So I prepared a couple questions just so you guys know. Someone just said, go Canucks. Why are we talking about the NHL now? Okay, so I prepared some questions for you guys watching too. We're going to have some time at the end for you guys to get your questions in here as well that I'll get to Trevor. But the first question is just like, what has life been like for you during this global pandemic? you're in Ohio, you're with the family. How are you staying in shape? How are you staying ready? And like what have you been learning about yourself and your faith during this time at home?
Yeah, staying in shape's been an easy part for me. I'm a very driven person, and my mom has a dance studio that has been shut down because of the pandemic, and she's
Mhm.
got two rooms in there, 20 yards long each, and gymnastics mats and great flooring for me to go in there and run. And
Yeah.
I've got lifting weights in my dojo, so that's been great. I've been being dad a lot more, trying to be, as good of a husband and father that I can be, and spending a
Yeah.
lot of time. But the thing that I've learned the most is that God's in control. You have athletes like LeBron James, that have had the world at their fingers
Right.
their entire lives, and their lives are being controlled by this pandemic, and that just goes to show that they're not God. Athletes aren't
Right.
God. Nobody is. We're at the mercy of what's going on in this world, and the one that is sovereign is God, and no matter what we want to do, it's about what He wants out of this world and what His plan is, and we're at the mercy of that.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, I was talking to someone the other day, and it was like, um, I think the whole world has been brought into like the same like a really similar situation. And pro athletes, like I was reading a thing the other day that there's NBA players that don't even have a hoop at home, and there's like
Yeah,
Jason Tatum, who's like a young star. He said the other
Giannis.
day he hasn't. Yeah, Giannis, like the dude hasn't shot. Like these
Yeah,
guys aren't even able to like practice, and I was just like, dude, like it's hitting everyone.
yeah. Yeah, it's a scary deal, but it just goes to show that nobody's above anything, and
Right.
the people that I feel for in this times are the ones that don't have their faith to lean on. And
Right.
to me, without faith, it's hard to understand a lot of the things that go on, and that could be a conversation in itself of what's going on in this pandemic, and where is God in this whole pandemic? Because I've had a few people message me, and because I'll post devotions and they'll ask me, like, where is God in all this?
Mm.
And it's been interesting conversations to be able to talk about that as well.
Yeah, we've been trying to engage in those conversations too, and um, it's definitely something where I think God is doing something through this. I think that song, I don't know if you've heard it, where it says He's taking what the enemy meant for evil and He's going to turn it for good. And I just believe that there's opportunities all around us, even in the midst of these things that look like obstacles, to really grow our faith and to reach people that have never been reached before. Even like right now, like we got a bunch of people tuning in online that maybe would never get to hear from you, right, and never be encouraged
Yeah.
by you. And so that's super cool. So let's get to life growing up. So you grew up in Ohio. We were talking before when we were trying to get everything ready to go live. You played basketball and football. What was life like for your family growing up? Like, what did your parents do for work? What were some of the things that you went through, I guess, as a kid, and what molded you into like who you are as an adult?
Yeah, my mom is a dance teacher. She owns a dance studio. She got 500 kids, and
Oh,
I
wow.
took dance from her growing up for 14 years. I did some gymnastics, some jazz dancing, some partnering, and those sorts of things. And recently, last off season, I actually did tap dancing, for
Oh, wow.
footwork and those sorts of things. And my dad's a contractor. He
Yeah.
owns a construction company, but he works for himself, has one employee, and I used to work with him over the summers and
Yeah.
learned a lot about what the value of a dollar is by roofing a house when it's 40 degrees Celsius over
Yeah.
a summer day. And he's just a blue collar guy. I've seen him get shot in the hand with a nail gun and him pull the nail out and rub dirt on it and keep
No.
working. And like,
Oh,
he's
my
just a
goodness.
very, very tough individual. He used to box prisoners on Tuesday nights when he was bored. Just a really like different guy. And
Yeah.
in terms of just how tough he is. And so a lot of my toughness and, sort of competitive fire has kind of come from that. And my parents are both just two outstanding people that raised us kids really, really well. I've been really fortunate.
That's really cool. So you said he used to fight prisoners on Tuesday nights? Like there was like how did that work?
Yeah, so back in the day, you used to be able to go out on Tuesday nights and go into prison and box prisoners, and he used to do that on Tuesday nights. I mean, just wired a little differently. I mean, I've got little parts of Tom Harris in me, but not that screw loose kind of
Okay.
stuff.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
he's not some like wicked like off this rocker kind of guy, but he's just wired a little differently.
Yeah. He's tough. That's crazy.
Hmm.
Like that's a true story. He rubbed dirt in it. He
Oh
actually got
yeah, I mean, I
shot.
was working with him over the summer. His employee accidentally put the nail gun down, and it shot out, and it went into his hand, and he just pulled it out and just rubbed dirt on it, and I was just like, Yeah, remind me to never fight this guy.
Yeah, that's the moment you knew he was built different.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. So okay, I mean, quick shout out. This guy said he's no Lucas Manis at basketball, and then he went on to say that he had um, D2 offers to play basketball. He had some D1 offers to walk on and play basketball. But you ended up choosing Edinburgh University where you played D2 football. I know you're a super humble guy, but I was looking at your Wikipedia page doing my pretty intense research for this, and it said that you broke. It's just a quote. You broke every career passing record in the conference. You were a two-time runner-up for the NCAA Div 2 Player of the Year. And I just remember when my dad and I were in Edmonton talking, one of the things you talked a lot about was your time at university and how that molded your faith. And I remember there was a specific, I think it was a lady you talked about. Can you just take us through, like, what was it about that experience at university? Were there people around? What kind of community did you get yourself surrounded in that actually helped you grow in your faith and make your faith something that was personal to you during your time there?
Great question. And with all the records and stuff in college, that stuff doesn't happen with teammates. And I know that's cliche, but
Yeah.
it's very true. I mean, as you know, in basketball, I mean, if all four of your teammates went and stood at midcourt while you were on offense, you'd have a tough time. And, it would have been the same thing for me. But yeah, a lady named Sandy Everhart, when I was in college, she's just when I'd be watching film on Tuesday afternoons, coming in to study the game plan and those sorts of things, she'd just stop in and just ask me a few questions and invite me to the bagel shop. And eventually one time I was like, yeah, I'll go to the bagel shop. Yeah, I'm Catholic. I grew up Catholic.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was always the guy sitting next to my mom going, hey, how much time's left in church?
Yeah.
That was me. And on Friday nights, on football game nights, I was like, hey, I better not say any cuss words today because then God's going to bless me. If not, I just had a very distorted view of who Christ was. And then I met Sandy, and she kind of just started taking me through what God's love really is, who Jesus is, what he came to do. And then I started reading the Bible a little bit toward the end of my college career, and I thought that if I'm going to take ownership of the biggest decision of my life, I better do some research into this and look into this and what this is about, who he is. And so I did, and I started really praying a little bit more and doing the things I needed to do to get to know God a little bit more. And, my relationship with him grew just like any relationship that you have in our lives. Just if I introduce you to somebody on day one, you're not going to know them as well as you will in year 10. And it's just continued to progress for me. And, I'm thankful.
So that's an interesting thing because I've noticed someone just said Trevor Harris is a different kind of athlete, man. And that guy that said that, he scored. So he's a middle, what do you call that? The back end of he's a soccer player, and he's like he plays defense, like the furthest guy back on the field. I don't know that much about. And so they're in the national tournament. He played at Trinity Western University, which is the same league as what I played in at Calgary. And they were in the national quarterfinal or national semifinal. And I don't think he'd scored all year. And he scored a bicycle kick in the 92nd minute to send the game to overtime. Like, it was the most insane thing I've ever, and like, he's not like a striker, right? This guy, and it was just like, he's actually getting married to my little sister. So that's kind of cool too.
Really?
But yeah, this guy's just a legend. I remember watching that. I was at Calgary, we had a league game, and I was late for our warm up because I was in the hallway trying to hide from my coach so that I could watch the end of the game. It was just crazy, but, so he's a pretty good athlete himself.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So it's cool because I've been thinking about that lately too. It's like, anything that you water is going to grow. And so, like, with our relationship with God, I think I've been trying to figure out lately why I think for a lot of the students and even older people too, but it can be really hard sometimes to get into our Bible. Like, we know it's the right thing to do. We know we should do our devotions. We know we need to pray. We know we need, have you ever dealt with that in your life where it's kind of difficult? And how have you gotten through that? And I know for me, even when it's difficult, I know so much in my heart this is what I need to do, so I do it anyway. But I think when you're just starting out in your faith, that's when you can experience those attacks. And like, maybe some people are falling off because they're still young in the journey. So what kind of advice would you give them on that one?
Yeah, it's a great question because I think everybody goes through that time in their Christian walk where, you just sort of drift along and you're never really pressing. But I think it's just like anything. If I were to tell you that you wanted to get better at shooting free throws, if you just started casually shooting them and not really putting yourself in the frame of mind, you're going to get worse.
Right.
And and you're rather rowing and drifting. And I've said this many a times. Satan rules this earth. When we're here on earth, this is Satan's earth, and this is his playground. And the devil's going to find work for idle hands. And anytime that you're going through anything, typically he's going to be the one trying to whisper in your ear to go his way. And so if you're not actively pursuing God, you're going to have a different force pulling you. And everybody experiences that. I mean, I know that a lot of people struggle with things like pornography, and they struggle with things like lust and money and women. And as athletes, that's a big struggle with a lot of your teammates and whatnot. And if you're not careful, you're always going to have that temptation of those things pulling at you, trying to pull you away from God, because Satan doesn't want you to have the great things. And so anytime that I feel myself not wanting to do that, I know that's the enemy telling me that, hey, you've got some blessings ahead of you. I better get active and try and get this guy away from it, because if not, he's going to be pushing toward these blessings. So I always took that as a time where, hey, now's the time to really buckle up, write down what I'm going to do every day. And I'm going to stick to this. I'm going to let God know that, hey, I'm going to keep striving for him, because if you keep striving, he's going to keep pulling for you, and you're going to continue to grow toward him. Yeah.
So when those temptations, when it gets hard, you're kind of saying that you think you're on the brink of some blessing. And so that's when you actually need to press in even more. That's cool.
Yeah.
And I think we need like how I sometimes say it is, I think we need you're either rowing or drifting. Yeah, that's really good. You need a reserve of truth when the devil starts whispering all these lies in your ear. And if you're not spending time in the Word, spending time around people that speak truth to you, then you don't have the truth to counteract the lies that you're hearing. And so that's a big part. I think that for me, that's why I like to memorize some scripture, make sure I'm in scripture and I'm actually absorbing it. So then when the devil's telling me lies, I can be like, I know that's not true because of this word from God. So anyways.
Yeah. Yep. It's always darkest before dawn, right? It's kind of that whole deal. And during those times where you are getting pulled negatively, it's the time to really press on, just like the times where you don't want to go work out. Those are usually the best workouts you get.
Yeah,
those are the times where you separate yourself. So
right. Okay, so in 2010 you graduated. So you enter the draft. Were you expecting maybe to get drafted? Like, was that something? What was that looking like going in for you?
Phew, that's a long story in itself, but in a nutshell, I was told I got a call from the New Orleans Saints that said they were going to draft me, and then the call from the Jacksonville Jaguars said they were going to draft me. So I thought I was going to get drafted, and they actually called and said, "Hey, get ready. I think we're going to pick you here." And they ended up picking a left-handed quarterback from Oregon State, and so it kind of just threw me off. And then actually, I committed to the Jaguars during the draft. They said, "Hey, if you don't get drafted, you're going to come here."
Oh, you did it during the draft. Okay.
Yeah, and they just said, if you don't get drafted, will you commit to us right now? And I was like, for sure. And so I knew I was going to Jacksonville if I didn't get drafted in the 7th round by a few other teams that were interested in me. And from there, kind of just started the biggest whirlwind of my life of the next few years.
So I'm going to get into that now. I remember when we were talking with my pops and I in Edmonton, these 2 years, so I want you to take us through it a little bit. So you, from 2010, undrafted free agent, that's what it said officially, but that story is actually kind of cool that you committed to them during the draft, which is sweet. And then it was 2 years before you signed with Toronto, but obviously must have felt like a lot longer. Can you just take us through, and you can take your time on this, from 2010, when undrafted free agent, and then 2012 when you signed with Toronto, like you played for a bunch of teams. Just take us through how that went for you.
Yep. In Jacksonville, I thought that I'd earned a practice squad spot. I got a lot better during my time there, and I got released. And up until that point, I was a 3-sport athlete in high school. I was all-state in football, all-state in basketball, and in baseball, I hit over 400. I was first team all-Central District. I had schools calling me to come play baseball for them, and so I was well-rounded, and I was always pretty good at what I was doing. And then I went to college. I was a 4-year starter and had a lot of success in college and learned a lot, and go to the NFL. And so that's the highest level. And I've always been successful everywhere I've been. I've been the big fish in the small pond everywhere. And then I finally go to the NFL, and I'm like, I'll be fine. I'll figure this out. And I got released, and I thought I was playing well enough to at least show that I deserved to be there. And it was a really humbling experience. I was like, you guys don't want me? What do you mean you don't want me?
Yeah.
And I needed to be humbled. And that was one of those things where I was glad God took the reins, because I needed to be humbled, and I had a lot to learn about myself. And I'm thankful. Probably the biggest thing that happened for me in my career was that 2-year stretch where I got released by Jacksonville. I went out to arena football and played in Arizona. And I thought, I'm just going to go out there, win league MVP. I ended up being a backup in arena football, making $400 a week out in Arizona. And then during that, I actually get a call from the Buffalo Bills that they were going to pick me up. And then all of a sudden they called me back. I'm on my way to the airport to go fly to Buffalo. And they said, hey, we got to rescind your contract offer because you can't report here until August 9th. And so I signed back with my arena team. They took me back that day. I literally just went back into practice that day. After the season was over, I got picked up by the Hartford Colonials of the UFL, and we're 9 days into camp, and the team folded because the owner said he couldn't promise us to pay us our checks. So I went back again to finish the season with Arizona. And so I finished the season with Arizona as a backup quarterback. And after the season, I get picked up by a different United Football League team, the Sacramento Mountain Lions, to play 5 games, and then the league folded. So I'm like, man, I've been a part of, the NFL lockout. I was a backup in arena. A team folded, and then a league folded, and then another arena football team picks me up, the Orlando Predators.
Yeah, that's the one that I saw. Yeah.
And we're on our way to the first game of the year, and they cut the entire team because they thought that we were going to protest on the field.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So they cut the entire team, and they signed a replacement team. I mean, it was the most bizarre thing I've ever seen. Like, I'm pulling in the garage to the first game of the year, and they cut the entire team. All of a sudden, these guys carrying in pads come in.
Like a full new team?
They had a team ready, and they signed these guys like that day and just played with the replacement team. And like, we're all just like dumbfounded, just sitting there watching these people walk in. And so I just said, the hell with it, man. I'm going home. I'm done with this pro football thing, this washing machine of pro football. My brother had 2 years left at university, which was where I played, and they offered me the coordinator position.
Oh yeah.
So I said, this is what I'm called to do. My heart's in football and ministry. I can minister to kids. And so I accepted the job, and I drove home. I was like, I'm going to take a week, and I laid my head down at night for 2 consecutive nights in a row. I just 3 o'clock in the morning, just suddenly woke up and just sat up out of bed. And I just felt God tell me that I wasn't done playing football, that he had a lot more for me to learn. And I just ignored it. And the next night, the same exact thing. And I was like, okay, I can't be disobedient. I mean, delayed obedience is still disobedience. And so I was like, I'm going to obey now. And so I called my coach from college, and I said, hey, I can't do it. I've got to take this contract offer from Toronto. And that was when I finally made it up to Toronto.
Okay, so there's a lot that we could unpack from that. The one thing I would just be curious on is, like, so when you woke up out of bed and you felt God talking to you, like, was that just kind of a feeling you had? Like, or did you hear his voice, or what was that like for you?
I think anybody that has felt God speak to them, it's a very distinct difference between your conscience and when you know it's God speaking to you. Most of the time it's our conscience, which can be the Holy Spirit guiding us. But I really felt that it was divine, that he woke me up and just said, you need to do this. I need you to hear me, because all I wanted was stability. I just wanted stability. And that was why I wanted to go take a coaching job. But it was God telling me, go. I need you to go. I've got a lot more for you to learn. I've got more for you. And boy, was he right. I was wrong. Because I wanted to take the job, but I knew I had to obey what I was hearing.
Right. So, because I had a question, my question is more so along the lines of, this is incredible, bro. Thank you for doing this, man. I wish Big Gelly's loving it. I was going to ask you, like, well, how did you not quit? Like, how did you stay resilient? But it really sounds like your faith was the one, like, because you were kind of on your way to a different career path. You were going to hang up the cleats playing wise. And so that's cool that you obeyed. And it kind of answers my question that I guess it was your faith in God and the fact that you had spent that time getting to know him, where you could actually hear his voice and his call in your life, and then you actually listened too. So would you say, like looking back, are there things that you learned about like what did you learn during that 2-year stretch about even about the business of football or life or different things like that?
Yeah. It's easy to connect the dots looking backwards.
Yeah, it
It's
is.
easy to say like, I mean, shoot, that's led me to be on this show, and we may influence somebody to believe in Christ,
Right.
through this show, and there's purposes like that
Mm,
that he has so much work for us to do. But it's impossible looking forward to say how we're going to connect the dots. We can't see that. We just have to have faith.
mm,
And that's really what faith is the assurance of things hoped for and the conviction of things not seen, right? In
mm.
Hebrews 11:1. And so we just got to have faith that the dots will connect moving forward.
Yeah.
And at that time, I didn't know that at that time, but at that time it was just literally a faith jump to say like, okay, God, I trust you, man. I know you've got something for me
Mm,
and a greater purpose than what I have in mind for me to go to Edinburgh and coach right now.
mm.
You've got something greater. I've just got to trust that you're going to connect the dots making forward. So it was just that blind leap of faith, and I couldn't be more thankful.
That's crazy. One thing I'm trying to get better at is like, um, I've always been really driven. I think I can relate to you a little bit in that. And so one thing I'm trying to get better at is like every now and then to pause and look back and say, that's how far God brought me. That's how God used me over that stretch because I was willing and because I had faith. But for me, I can be so focused on keeping my head down and just work. Like I'm working for God every day. So it's not like I'm turning my back, but to turn back and say, wow, thank you for everything you did over that 6-month stretch or that whatever. And so I know for me, that's even just encouraging for me to remember to look back every now and then too.
For sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's they talk about it in Timothy, you finish the race, and when you look back and look at the journey of where you've come, like typically there's really nothing significant about what you're going through except for who you're becoming and who you're influencing.
Right.
And to me, that's been the biggest lesson to me that I've ever learned is the only thing significant about what we do today, tomorrow, or in any moment is literally who we're becoming and who we're
Mm,
influencing. And because at the end of the day, who you're trying to become is you've got to ask yourself what you're doing now. Is that going to make you into
right.
the person that you want to accomplish the things you want to
Yeah.
accomplish? So by eating junk food and playing video games all day, is that going to make me into the person that I want to be in
Right.
10 years?
Right.
Ask yourself all those sorts of things.
Yeah. I was talking to my youth small group yesterday. When did Toronto? It was 2012 that he signed with the Argos. And I was just talking to them about like exactly that. I said, man, if you can wake up every day and just remind yourself what your purpose is. So your purpose, who you're trying to become, who you want to be that day, in order to become the person you want to be. I think it helps you make the right choices. But I think sometimes we can get bogged down and we don't remind ourselves like what our actual like the meaning behind everything we do should be. I mean, as Christians, it should be to point people to Christ, to live a life that points people to Him. And so it's exactly what you were saying too. So that's super cool. So 2012, it's funny because so you get to the Argos, and a lot of people are probably like, well, he finally made it. You're a CFL starting quarterback now, star player in the CFL, but that was like that's 8 years ago, or right. So it was actually your 4th year before you were a starter. And so in those 4 years, even in the first year, it said, I don't know how true this is, but it said that you had to earn a roster spot in preseason by playing super well. And then you did. And then my question for you would be, first of all, is that accurate, I guess? And then from a position of a backup quarterback or whatever in Toronto, how were you able to lead up? So like, I know with leadership, a lot of people, especially younger people, think that you have to be the CEO or the principal or the starting quarterback to be a leader. But we're all leaders and we all have influence, like you were talking about. So what were some of the things you did? I mean, you were still competitive. You wanted to be the starter. How were you able to be a good teammate, but still keep the same drive and like determination to take that spot for yourself?
Yeah, everything's about a process, and I think that when you're becoming, who you want to be, there's a process to it. And I think everybody in this social media world thinks that it's instant. Everything's instant. You can buy
Mm,
everything on Amazon with one click. You can buy all these things. Like everything is instant, and really, it's just a process. And to me, during that time, I was like, okay, I've just got to make this team. And they actually brought in a guy that had experience playing with the head coach that I was with because they wanted to cut me. And I just played well enough to hang around long enough to get an opportunity. And, the first year I was a third string guy. The second year I battled for the 2 job between Zach Kalaris and myself. And just so happened that they thought Zach was a better chance that week. And he played outstanding and had an awesome year. And we were roommates and we, competed every day. And so then the next year I was the backup again. And then Ricky Ray had surgery in 2014 during the off season, and he wasn't going to be ready to start the year. And it all culminated to that all the work I'd put in for those first 3 years, that the coaching staff was rather going to trust me to take the reins while Ricky was hurt, or they weren't. And so to me, it was just about playing well enough to hang around long enough to get that opportunity. And all the work that I'd put in up to that point had really told the coaches, like, this guy deserves a shot. And that's what they told me. They were like, we were going to bring in a veteran, but you just worked so hard and you kept your head down. You did the right things that we had no choice but to see if our investment in you, that we had you around that long, was worth it. And they did. And I knew that everything I did in 2012, 13, and 14, I could have just sat my head down and collected a paycheck, but it was more about who I was becoming and what I saw myself being in 5 years. And I knew that if I wanted to become the franchise quarterback, I had to work like that, and I had to carry myself like that. And to me, like, it was such a parallel with my faith, because you don't know when your faith is going to be tested. Right. If you're a married person, you don't know when, that woman is going to come knocking on your door and try and test your marriage. You don't know when, Satan's going to whisper in your ear to pull up a website that you shouldn't pull up. Right. Go watch some certain things you shouldn't, like anything there is, you don't know when your faith is going to be tested. So that's why it's so important to continue to work to make yourself diligent, bulletproof, to the point where Satan can't penetrate your life. And to me, like, it was the same parallel with my work, is I want to become bulletproof as a starting quarterback as best I can. And the only thing I can do is just stay where I'm at and continue to grind and work. And it ended up working out for me.
Wow, that's really encouraging, man. Because I had a question here. What advice would you give to someone who maybe feels overlooked? Like, did you ever feel like they were maybe overlooking some of the things you could bring to the table, or did you just stay so locked in on the process and staying ready? Or were there ever times where you're like, man, like, I know what I bring to the table and I'm not getting a shot? Or did that not really even creep in Toronto?
Oh, no, it definitely did. I was frustrated. I was like, man, these guys even know, like, what I'm about? Are they going to give me a chance? And at the end of the day, that was not what it's about. It's not about me. And I think that was a big lesson for myself through those years of sitting 6 years, from 2010, 11, 12, 13, 14. And then finally in 2015, I finally get a chance. And that it was finally time for me to do that. But at the end of the day, it was just like, okay, take a deep breath and realize, like, what this is really about. This is about who I'm becoming. And I just tried to just continue to work, and I did. And, as for advice, I'd love to say the cliches of, like, don't give up, don't let others tell you what to do. But, like, and they're all true. There's nothing wrong with it. But, like, I think everybody says that. To me, it's just about, like, be where your feet are. Like, where your feet are, be right there, because people are always worried about failures from their past or anxieties from the future. But if you are right where your feet are, this is where your feet are. Use what you got, start where you are, and do what you can. And be right there and do everything you can right now to become the best version of yourself. And that's really all you can do, because if you are right here in this present moment, those anxieties in the future can't exist. The past failures can't exist if you're just remain present, be where your feet are.
That's so good. My dad's in the chat. He's gonna start knocking you off probably in his messages coming up here. I know he has a notepad right now. He's writing some of this stuff down. Okay, so we got some questions coming in. I'm just gonna I think I have 2 or 3 more here before we get to their questions. So, okay, this is my nerdy sports question, because for a while I wanted to be a sports agent. I let that dream die. But so in Ottawa, 68 touchdowns, 26 picks in 3 years. That's where you went after Toronto. Obviously, to get there, you went through free agency in Toronto, and then you had a free agency experience that was a lot different in Ottawa. I remember you saying that you were 99.99% sure you're going to stay in Ottawa. Obviously, you're the Eskimos quarterback now, so things changed along the way at some point. So can you take us through those 2 free agency processes? Like, what were those like for you? How are they different? I've always been interested as a sports fan, like what it's like to be a free agent. And obviously you guys are humans, and so that means you're moving your family. There's all kinds of other things like that are involved. And so how were those experiences different? And what did you, I guess, learn about like the business of football and life kind of through those?
Yeah, the biggest thing that I learned is not to tell God my plans, because he'll just laugh. And because I thought that I had my plans set out, that I was going to stay in Ottawa, and so I was like, oh, I'll be staying in Ottawa for sure. And so from there, I learned the Bible verse to don't worry about tomorrow, because tomorrow has worries of itself, and that if I want to make my plans, then God's going to laugh at me. And because at that point in time, we just came off of a Grey Cup appearance, and I'm young and entering my prime, and I thought there's no way we were going to not be in Ottawa. And sure enough, God had a different plan, and I was just there to be along for the ride. And as in Toronto, I knew that it was probably going to end and go a different place, because they had Ricky Ray, and he still had a year, 2 left, and maybe 3, and so it was maybe time for me to go on, and I knew I wanted to go have a team of my own, because I was ready for that step, I thought. And so that was no surprise, but the one in Ottawa was a very, very, very big surprise to me. But like I said, we're not in control. God had other plans for me, and who knows, what the future holds with football. But I hope to be in Edmonton for the rest of my career, and I'm just really thankful for the journey, because like I said, like looking back, everything makes sense of why God did it. But at that time, I was like, man, I don't want to go anywhere else, So, but again, it was just one of those things where trust and just have faith that things will connect in the future.
That's so good. I'm happy you're in Edmonton personally. I think last year my dad and I were getting so pumped, obviously because of you. You were the starting quarterback, so we were tuning in and watching a lot more Eskimos games. I think that was the most Edmonton Eskimos I've watched since Ricky Ray. So it had been a long time for me. But you guys had an awesome start to the year, and then I remember you hurt your elbow. Obviously, and when we came to visit you, that was kind of at the beginning of starting to deal with that injury, and it lingered for a while. I remember. And I don't want to talk too much about the past, because obviously you're looking forward now. But when you did spend some time reflecting on the 2019 year, as a quarterback, right-handed, you hurt your right elbow. What was that like? Like, obviously feels like a loss of control, kind of your power. Like, I remember I was watching an interview, and you said you felt like Spider-Man without the web. And so I guess kind of what did God teach you through that? I guess, again, it's like that we're not in control, that he is. But do you want to kind of go into that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. And to me, like, the biggest thing that to me during that time was, man, as a quarterback, like, you're no longer the leader if you're not playing. But that's not true. No matter what position anybody that's listening to this is in, everybody's a leader, because all leadership is, if it's broken down in its most simple form, is influence. And so everybody has influence. Whenever you enter any conversation, you're rather going to give energy to somebody, or you're going to take energy from them. I mean, if you just go test it out tomorrow, whenever you talk to somebody, they rather give energy to you, or they take energy from you. So you have leadership capability in you. So do you want to be an energy giver or an energy taker? And I knew that during that time I had an opportunity to still lead. And so it was more about, what can I do? Okay, well, I can encourage Logan. He was my backup quarterback.
Yeah, I remember that.
I can encourage our receivers to say, hey, man, Logan's going to get this done, man. We're going to go out and get this done together. I'm here to help game plan. I'm here to answer any questions. So those are things that I can do for my teammates. As for myself, the other things I can do for my teammates, but more in a selfish way, is I can rehab my butt off. I can do the right things. I can get the right amount of sleep. I can let my body heal. I can be smart. I can, take anything I can do. So it's more about, like, okay, you can't do this, but what can you do?
Right.
And so, like, you ask yourself the positive questions. Don't think about, like, oh, I can't throw now, I can't play.
Right.
It's just like, that's just a loser mindset. So what can you do is, you can rehab, you can influence your team, you can do all positive things. Like, there's plenty you can do. It's just about finding that. But it's more about finding it here first.
Right. So I think when I've been talking to a lot of my students, I think we're all going through this to a degree, but it's like, even what you're talking about there is like, what can I control right now? What can I do? I think a lot of us are having to answer that question in our day-to-day lives with our faith, because it's hard. Like for some people, isolation is harder than it is for others, but maybe they got laid off.
Sure.
They're getting paid by the government right now. They don't even know. I have a buddy, he doesn't even know if they'll have work when they open up again. Like he's like, dude, I don't know. And then all of a sudden he's going to get cut off from like, so he's trying to figure out all this stuff. And so there's real things that people are going through. Just like your injury. I mean, that's your livelihood. Your right arm to throw and everything. But I think it's important for everyone listening that you guys really heard what he said there. It's like you controlling what you can control. There's things that God has for us every single day. And maybe it's just as simple as like reaching, like I said, like there's people in all of our circles of influence that need us to give them energy. So even if it's a call or a text or whatever it is, but yeah, that's so good, man. That's a important reminder, I think.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Okay, so this is a question that we're gonna get in. We got a bunch of, so you guys too watching right now, we have a bunch of questions already in here. Drop your questions now. Jake is we got a Google Doc in front of me right here. That's why I have my laptop, and he's putting the questions in. I gotta ask this one. So it says, what's your favorite play you've ever made? I'm just gonna, like, it could be any sport too, I think, but he's probably wondering about football. But like, what's the favorite play you've ever made?
Oh man. The first one that jumped in my mind was 2015 against Ottawa when I played for Toronto. I threw Chad Owens a touchdown in the back corner of the end zone to beat Ottawa with like 12 seconds left. We were down by 5, and he made a one-handed catch. Like they came with zero blitz, and I just drifted back and threw it, and he made a one-handed catch in the end zone. And then there's a few more where we've had some really big comeback victories that like we've had, last second touchdowns that have come back to win games and, clinch playoff spots. And there's been some big time moments, that you share with teammates, like the East Final win in Ottawa in 2018. And but man, there's just so many. But like I think back to like if I were to ask you, like, what's the best feeling in sports? You ever hit a home run before?
Like when I was 6, maybe.
Over the fence?
I played Little League, yeah.
So, like, the question is, what's the best feeling? Scoring a game-winning touchdown, hitting a game winner when time expires in basketball, or hitting a home run? And so, like, hitting a home run, man, there's just something that just, like, feels so good when you hit a home run over the fence, So, I don't know. There's
you think, is that moments. Your answer, home run? That would be your answer?
Man, I think so. I think my first home run ever was just, like, the coolest feeling ever.
Were your parents there?
No, I don't think so.
Dude, I would have been strutting around the bases so hard, man. That I specialize so much from like grade 8, so I don't really have those experiences with other sports. I'm trying to be that old guy in men's league that relives the glory days and like all the different sports.
Goes way too hard. Wears the headband. Yeah. The rec specs. Yeah, exactly, you gotta go hard.
I always made fun of that guy growing up, and now I'm becoming that guy. So I gotta repent for that.
Hey, you can't turn it off, man. That's all right.
Yeah, I know. Okay, so did you find it tough, or do you find it tough to play professional sports and live for God? Any advice?
That's a great one. And I get that quite a bit. And to me, the best thing, it's not hard. It's actually been really good for me, because I think if you really want to test who you are, go in an environment that's not yourself. Just like if you go in the Bible, Jesus hung out with the tax collectors, the prostitutes. I mean, those are the people that he went. And I mean, Matthew, tax collector. I mean, like, he was hated, and these are the people that he hung out with and turned around. And so to me, I find out who I am as a Christian, who I am as a man, by being in environments that's not quite like myself, not judging them. I'm killing a critical spirit, but I'm cultivating a critical eye. I'm training my critical eye. Like, maybe I shouldn't be like that. I'm not judging it, but you've got to understand what you don't want to be and what you do want to be, just like you learn from other people's mistakes. Yeah. And so the best thing you can do, because most people in a locker room where they don't want Christianity, they think you're trying to shove it down their throat. So I just preach the gospel, but use words when necessary. And what I mean by that is I just try and live for God and do it by my actions. And it's kind of the old adage of, if being a Christian were a crime, would you be convicted just by the way you act? And so I just try and do that. I just try and, live out my faith. But to me, it's a good test of faith to be in a locker room like that around
Right.
people that, don't necessarily act or talk the way that you do. And so it's a challenge for sure, but I think it's a good way to authenticate yourself.
Yeah, that's good. I had a question about that too. I think for me, I found it hard when I was at Calgary because one of our staff members just said I'm writing that one down for sure. I remember when I was at Calgary, I wanted to be like one of the boys so that they would listen to me, or that they knew that I was their friend enough where they could come to me if they ever wanted some advice or had some questions. But I found myself creeping into their lifestyle with them because I was trying to be their friend. And I just found it a tough tension when I look back at it. I'm like, man, I really should have just really leaned into that, preaching the gospel and use words when I need it and just live it out every day, and be a light and an example to them. But yeah, no, that's good. So it says, this is one of my youth team leaders. He says, growing up in Ohio, are you a Buckeyes fan through and through? Asking because Paul Bunyan is coming home to Michigan this year, back to where he belongs. That's what he says.
Yeah, I was a Buckeye fan growing up.
Okay.
I'm not sure what the Paul Bunyan. I think the Paul Bunyan axe is like Minnesota, Wisconsin. I thought, but I could
Yeah.
be wrong. But if he
Yeah.
thinks Michigan's beating Ohio State, I don't think that's gonna happen anytime
No, I
soon.
don't
Man.
either.
The talent gap is so big right now. I hate to say it. I'm not.
Is it actually?
Yeah. It's like, I mean, the talent gap with Ohio State and the rest of the Big Ten right now is pretty crazy.
It is, yeah. I'm a Michigan State fan because of Tom Izzo in basketball.
Oh yeah.
And we had Kirk Cousins a couple years ago, but it's been tough the last few years.
I've talked to Kirk Cousins before. Good
Oh,
guy.
you have?
Yeah.
He seems like a nice dude. Like, he just seems like a good dude.
Yeah.
He got roasted.
I've heard that.
He got roasted for. You remember when he was running through the tunnel? He was screaming. Have you seen those clips before?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You like that?
Yeah. That's what he said. You like that? That was so funny, man. I love it. Okay, we got a couple more here. So, what is how do you keep your work ethic so strong? And I'll add to that, just for you guys that don't know. He told me when we were at Edmonton with my pops, he said, as soon as I'm not the hardest working player in the CFL, I'm going to retire. And so how do you keep that mindset? And is that a little bit from your dad, I guess, but how do you keep that going?
To me, I just don't want to shortchange my teammates. And it's as simple as that. I've never wanted to shortchange my teammates. I've never want to shortchange God. And I feel like he's blessed me with a drive and a work ethic that I feel is unmatched. And as soon as I feel like that's not the case, I feel like I'll be cheating the game and cheating God. And I don't want to do that. And I've just always had a deep rooted love for my teammates, and that I don't ever want to let them down. And I want them to know that I'm the most prepared, and I'm going to give them every ounce I have. And the day that I can't say that, I don't ever want to look at my teammates in the face after a game and say, like, man, I could have done more.
Yeah.
Or look myself in the mirror and say that. And I've always just had that drive. And I don't know how that goes out, Lucas. That's a question I've asked myself. Like, how do I know when I'm done playing? Because I don't know how this fire burns out, because I've always lived my life that way. And I'm just going to keep going until I feel like I don't want to do it anymore physically.
Right. Yeah, physically, yeah. Is that the hardest thing about football? I've never played. Like, is it the physical grind of football, or is it a mental, like, because it's such a physical sport? Like, does that get to you ever?
The physical part, no. I mean, like, the mental part is really hard, because you're playing against some of the best athletes in the world, and it can get daunting if you let it. And the physical part is tough, like, because you wake up sore, you're tired, but like that mental grind through a 6-month season of, like, pushing every day and pressing and like preparing, and eventually you hit a wall. And so you just got to find ways to kind of contort yourself through those times and, go watch a movie,
Right.
or, do certain things to take your mind off football to kind of refresh yourself. And it's just like anything in life, that you've got to have balance and balance in ways of, my life is very far out of balance, but you've got to have other things to go to allow yourself to keep that sanity.
Right. So this is my question, because I think that catch by Chad Owens, I think I might have seen that on one of the catches of the year a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Like, it was that good, right? Like, it was one of those ones.
Yeah.
So, two questions. What makes him so good? And then, who's the best receiver you've ever played with? College, high, like, in your life? Not to put anyone on blast, like they're gonna be mad you didn't choose them or whatever, but I'm just kind of
Yeah.
curious. Yeah.
What separated Chad to me was his meticulous like routine.
Okay.
Like we'd be in meetings and like I'd turn around and be like, "Hey Chad," and I'll be like, "Oh, where'd CO go?" And he's like on the ground, he's like rolling on a ball on his hamstring,
Yeah.
and like he's like rolling on a ball on his hip flexor. After practice, he's stretching, he's running, and he's running a basic route, and he's like taking me taking me through how he's gonna run the route versus this leverage. If the will presses him, if he slips inside on the will, he said he's gonna press vertical and get outside. He's very meticulous, and to me, that separated him.
Okay.
And he's a very driven guy, man.
Yeah.
He's one of those people where it drove him crazy to not be the best.
Yeah.
And as for the best receiver I've played with, man, it's I've really enjoyed playing with Brad and Greg throughout my career, but I think we've got some really good ones this year that I think are creeping up on that list for me, and so it's going to be a lot of fun to see how it works out.
Yeah.
But
I can't wait.
the first two guys that came to my mind were the Buds, Brad and Greg.
Okay. Cool. Okay, so my brother-in-law just asked this, and I know you mentioned it to me before. What's one of the best books you've read this year? You can shout out that John Wooden one, or you can shout a different one out. But yeah, what's one of the best books you read this year?
Actually, I'm getting ready to reread one of my favorite books. It's actually called Lead for God's Sake. You ever heard of it?
Yeah, you sent that to me. I'm listening. I'm like halfway through it on Audible.
Yeah, it's one of the best ones to read. It's a story about a coach, and it's about the heart of leadership, and it's a Christian book too. Very, very good book. One of my favorites. And then another one that I really, really enjoy as an athlete is called Mind Gym, and it's literally about like a gymnasium for your mind.
Okay. It's called Mind Gym. Okay, I'm gonna write that down.
Yeah, it's just like if I were to tell you like how much of playing sports is mental. Like if I were to ask you on a scale of 1, like out of 100, how much of sports is mental?
Like 75 to 80 probably for me.
So like, do you spend 75 to 80% of your time physically or mentally training? And so like,
no, I didn't
really like, you know what I mean? So like you should, if you think sports is 50% mental, you should spend 50% of your time training on your mentality, your mental side. Right. So
I've even heard that mental repetition, like actually counts for like muscle memory and like visualization, of like visualizing, like shooting a free throw or a three and actually seeing it go in and the actual spot on the floor. And I'm not I struggle with that. Someone said she's adding that book to her reading list. That's cool. But that's interesting. Is that something you do? Like, do you spend time on your mental game with football?
Absolutely. I work with a mental performance coach, Dr. Chantal Lussier, and she's based out of Quebec, and she worked with us for Ottawa. And everywhere I go, I'll always recommend her for any team that I'm working with. Her and I work on visualization quite a bit, and just always pushing ourselves mentally every week. And she gives me homework every week to do on my mental training. And so I'm always trying to push the envelope in that. And she helps me with that a ton.
Cool. Do you think that helps? Like, does that separate you a little bit? Because do you think a lot of the quarterbacks in the CFL are doing that to the same degree, or is that something you think that actually helps you kind of separate?
I think it helps me separate a little bit, but I don't know what everybody else does. I have a certain protocol that works for me. I actually have I do like this arrow training. I do some brain training. I do leadership training. I work with the mental performance coach. I read books. I'm constantly on the search for things that are kind of help me just turn over a stone and just find that 1% that I can get better at.
Right. Okay. Just a couple more questions. We'll get you out of here. I don't want it to be, if it's midnight your time, I'm going to be disappointed. So we'll get you out in just a couple minutes. This one has come in a couple times, so I'll ask you. So who's been the biggest influence in your life just to help, like, to bring you to where you're at right now?
Aside from Christ, like I'd hate to be cliche, but like it's real. My mom. And the reason I say that is she's the best leader I know. I've been around a lot of great coaches. I've been around a lot of great leaders in sports, but my mom's the best leader I know. And And the reason, and she has this dance studio, she has 500 kids, but the reason she is the best leader I know is she cares about her kids. She just cares. And she preaches the gospel without even knowing, because all she does is love those kids, man. Like,
Yeah.
and that has just been such a lesson to me as I go through this. I do the announcing for her recital every year, and I just watch her just gloat and tear up when she sees a kid conquer their fear and go out there and dance in front of 500 people.
Yeah.
And it's just like, she just loves the kids, man. And like, to me, like, if you want to influence, just care about other people. That's it. Just care. Just love them. And that's a biblical practice. Like, anytime I do any sort of research into leadership, it's outlined in the Bible for us first. And it's the most amazing thing.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. Thank you. Okay. I'm going to pick one more. Okay, I'll do a double question, and then we'll get you out of here. So what is your favorite verse that like means a lot to you? And then what podcast, if any, do you listen to?
I wish I was a podcast listener. I've heard some good reviews on Joe Rogan's podcast, but I wouldn't recommend it because I don't know what it's about. My favorite Bible verse is James chapter 1, verses 2 and 3, and it talks about, facing trials and tribulations of many kind, knowing that it's going to make us perfect and complete, needing nothing. Like, that's to me that, and that we need to consider them great joy. It's like such a backwards thought. It's like trials and tribulations can come of many kind, but consider it great joy. It's like, wow, man, like, what a mind-blowing thought.
Right.
And to me, that like, when you do that, and when you do grow, if you look back on the times you grew the most, it's during the tough times.
Sure.
And so when you're going through that, rest on those words and understand that what you're going through is for a reason. So open your ears, open your eyes, open all your senses to what you can learn and grow from in that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when I look at my life, it's like there's two things, I won't get into it, but like the two toughest times in my life, when I look back, that kind of forged me and made me into the person I am today. And it's weird, when I look back at it, I'm most thankful in my life for the hardest things that I've been through. Like, when I look back, I'm more thankful that God actually like allowed me to go through those, and then he didn't abandon me through them either. He was right there the whole time, and he was hurting with me, and he was there for me the whole time. And so that's just so true, man. I honestly, Trevor, thank you so much for doing this, bro. I know, like, it's what time is it? 11:41 there, something like that.
I'm not sure.
Oh, I think it's 11:40. I just want to say, on behalf of like the whole Southside family here, man, thank you for doing this, and we're rooting you on. I didn't want to get into what the CFL season might or might not look like, but when it starts up again, which it will, you got a bunch of new Eskimos fans here, and when you play in BC, I'm gonna take my youth group out or something, and we'll come and hang out and cheer you on, bro.
I got y'all tickets, man. Just let me know.
Okay, sounds good, man. Have a good one. Thank you so much.
All right, man.
Okay, take care. Okay, guys, so I'm just going to get into a quick closing segment here. Yeah, we got to give some shout-outs to him in the chat. I see you guys in there. He did kill it, man. He's a kind person. For me, I'm an average Joe. He always says that I'm like, he needs to get his rings up like me, but I just played college sports, man. This guy's a professional quarterback. He's humble. He always has time for me, and I just really appreciate the man that he is. And you guys heard his heart tonight. Yeah, I learned a lot too. And so I'm going to actually go back and watch it myself too and write down some of those leadership principles. He should start a podcast. He was saying he's not a podcast guy, but he should start his own. So, hey, couple more announcements. Hey, reminder, if you're joining us for the first time today, if this is the first time you've tuned in or you've never texted in, text the keyword hello. It'll be on the screen here to 604-670-3040, or go on our website, southsidelife.com, bottom right-hand corner. Just type in hello, and we'll send you a $5 Starbucks gift card. Again, it's just our way of saying that, hey, we appreciate you. We're happy you're here, and thank you so much for making us a part of your day. This weekend, it's a great weekend coming up. It's Mother's Day. Like he was talking about, his mom is his hero, and my mom is one of my heroes as well, man. I think we all love our moms so, so much. We're going to celebrate our moms. So we have on Saturday from 11 to 4 at the hangar, so 46185. Someone said you could be a sports radio host. Don't tempt me, bro, because ask my mom. I grew up and I always used to say I want to be a sports radio host. This is like, having this rigged up, man, this is like one of my dreams come true right now. You should start one together, brothers from another mother. I'll ask him. I don't know if he'll be interested in that, Daniel, but we'll see. So, hey, 11 to 4 at the hangar. We got dried flower bouquets. They're beautiful. We got baked goods from local small businesses as well. And we're actually doing social distancing family photos. Okay, so go to southsidelife.com. It'll be right here. southsidelife.com/Mother's Day to reserve a spot for those family photos. If your mom can't make it, just swing by and pick up the flowers and cookies and surprise her at home with them. Now, we're looking forward to a great weekend. That was a great time together. I love you guys so much. And I'll see you guys on Saturday for the drive-thru. I'll be here all day. And then Sunday, you'll see me live for the intro and outro. Take care, guys. We'll see you soon.